Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We really have a truly remarkable set of source materials in front of us
It
today.
really do.
Yeah. We are looking at extensive excerpts from a landmark piece of literature. It's Andrew Holleran's 1978 novel, Dancer from the Dance. And to kind of ground us before we even open the pages, I want you to visualize the book cover that's included in our source files.
It's a striking image.
It is so striking. It's really this haunting image. You see this young man, and he's sitting in a window frame, clutching his knees right up to his chest. He's looking away, totally lost in thought, incredibly contemplative.
Very moody.
Very. And the blurb across the cover proclaims it, and I quote, "The haunting novel of a young man's obsession with love."
Right.
And then, right on the title page, the author places a famous quote from William Butler Yeats' poem, Among School Children. It ends with that legendary line, "How can we know the dancer from the dance?"
It's such a perfect framing device for what's inside.
It really is.
Huh.
So, okay, let's unpack this. What we have here is technically a work of fiction, but our sources make it abundantly clear that it operates as a deeply factual, historical chronicle of gay life in post-Stonewall, pre-AIDS New York City.
Exactly. It's fiction, but it's not.
Right. So our mission for you, the listener, on this deep dive today is to explore the intoxicating and, frankly, sometimes really tragic intersection of beauty, desire, and the search for belonging in a world that operates strictly by night.
And to really grasp the weight of what we're looking at here, we need to place ourselves in that highly specific sliver of time. We are talking about the 1970s.
Right.
Stonewall happened in 1969, which obviously kicked off the modern gay liberation movement. And the AIDS crisis wouldn't officially be recognized by the CDC until 1981.
So there's this gap.
Yes, you have this roughly 10-year window of unprecedented social and sexual freedom. But what's fascinating here is that the author isn't just giving us a tour of discotheques and endless parties.
It's not just a travel guide.
No, not at all. At its core, this text functions as an anthropological study of a highly specific subculture. These are people who are actively trying to escape the mundane, practical realities of mid-century American life.
They're building something else entirely.
Exactly. They are attempting to build a parallel universe, a totally nocturnal society ruled entirely by music, aesthetics, and the pursuit of physical perfection.
Where the normal rules just don't apply.
Right, the conventional rules of society like status, wealth, family lineage, they are completely suspended. They're replaced by a completely different set of values. It is just a brilliant, devastating look at human longing.
I want to get right into how the book actually opens because it sets the tone in such an unexpected way. Like the prologue is essentially an epistolary frame.
The letters.
Yeah, the letters. It's told through this series of letters exchanged between two characters. And they aren't using their real names at all. They're writing to each other using these grandiose, highly campy pseudonyms.
That's right. One of the characters is writing from somewhere deep in the American South, and they're signing off with names like Agatha Lane de Rothschild.
Or Helinda Sevigny.
Exactly. And the other character is writing from the Lower East Side of New York City using monikers like Madeline de Rothschild.
Vision.
Right, Vision. Or Marie de Montenay.
So why do you think the author chose to start a novel about the New York club scene with letters from the rural South? Because when I was looking at the sources, it feels like such a jarring contrast to start there.
Well, it acts as a wide-angle lens. Before we zoom into the specific hyper-focused narrative of the protagonist, we get to see the two extreme poles of gay existence at that exact time.
Okay.
The writer in the South describes an environment of overwhelming, almost suffocating natural beauty and peace. The sources mention azaleas in bloom, mockingbirds, egrets nesting in golden weeds.
The scent of pine needles baking in the midday heat.
Yes. But there is a really dark, humorous undercurrent to it all, because the writer notes that everyone in this beautiful, lush paradise seems to be a retired postmaster dying of cancer.
Which sounds incredibly isolating. But then the Southern writer talks about finding profound peace in manual labor, right?
Yes, they do.
There's a whole section where they describe helping a neighbor install a septic tank. And they actually write that it's so much more fulfilling to deal with a literal septic tank than to deal with suicidal friends calling at 3 in the morning in New York.
Because they crave tangible, practical problems with practical solutions. The Southern writer literally declares that Americans are a practical people who need practical problems. They are just exhausted by the emotional theatrics of the city.
They just want to dig a hole and fix a pipe.
Exact.
And then you read the letters coming in response from New York, and it's absolute chaos. It's a completely different world. The NYC writer describes a freezing, brutal winter. They mention bag ladies sleeping outside on the steps of the dispensary, friends getting mugged by teenagers on the street.
It's gritty 1970s New York.
Very gritty.
Yeah.
And juxtaposed against this grim, bankrupt New York reality is this insane social scene. They describe a white party at a famous club called Flamingo. Can you explain what these parties actually look like based on the sources?
Yeah, so Flamingo was a real highly exclusive members-only gay club in Soho, and it was famous for these elaborate theme nights.
Okay.
The letters describe grown men arriving at this white party dressed in diapers or wearing sequin Halston tops. And for those who might not know, Halston was the absolute pinnacle of minimalist luxury American fashion in the 70s.
Right.
So you have this massive clash of extreme wealth, high fashion, and sheer drug-fueled absurdity happening inside, while the city outside is literally decaying.
It's like Rome before the fall.
Very much so.
The NYC writer also casually drops a massive life update in these letters. They announce they have quit their prestigious job at a major corporate law firm like Wallader, Wickersham, and Taft, and have turned to hooking to make a living.
A total pivot.
Right. And it's not just walking the streets. It's highly specific theatrical sex work. The sources mention giving enemas, staging jockstrap fetishes for older men, pouring chocolate syrup into jockstraps for $50 a throw.
It's a total gleeful rejection of their former respectable life.
Yeah, and amidst all this character, who refers to themselves as a doomed queen, announces they're going to write a gay novel.
And that announcement is what sparks the core literary and sociological debate of the entire prologue.
Because the friend in the South hates the idea.
The Southern friend immediately pushes back. They argue that mainstream America does not want to read about the reality of gay life. They paint this very specific picture of the target demographic. They say it's a guy taking the commuter train back to the suburbs of Chappaqua to his wife, his 2.6 kids, and his station wagon.
The American dream.
Right, and the Southern writer says that this guy wants a story like the television show My Three Sons.
Let's unpack that reference for a second. My Three Sons was a very wholesome, traditional 1960s sitcom.
Extremely wholesome.
It's about a widowed aeronautical engineer raising his boys in a perfectly functioning, loving suburban home.
Precisely. It was the sanitized, idealized American dream. So the Southern writer is arguing that if mainstream society must tolerate a story about gay life, they demand that it be a tragedy.
Wow.
Society insists that anyone rejecting the suburban family model, the My Three Sons model, must ultimately be miserable, violent, or doomed. It's a societal defense mechanism.
Because if the people living outside the rules are happy,
it threatens the validity of the choices made by the mainstream.
So they have to punish the characters in the media to make the straight audience feel secure.
Exactly.
But the New York writer doesn't back down from this at all. They fiercely reject the idea of writing a sanitized story. They specifically mock gay men who try to assimilate, the ones who run antique businesses with their partners and retire to Florida wearing double-knit slacks, walking their poodles.
They find that completely boring.
Boring because it's just a copy of straight middle-class life.
Right. So the author is declaring their intentions right from the start. The core subject of this novel won't be the acceptable, quiet gay men. It's going to be the doomed queens.
The failures in the eyes of capitalism.
The people who drive the car right off the cliff. They want to document the true loonies of society who absolutely refuse to camouflage themselves for the comfort of the mainstream.
I think about how often subcultures, whether that's based on sexuality, race, class, or even just artistic movements, are pressured to sanitize their existence to be palatable. Society essentially says, we will tolerate you, but only if you look and act exactly like us.
Assimilate or be cast out.
Right. Refusing to do that, refusing to write an uplifting, palatable story, is an act of profound rebellion.
It's a declaration that there is historical importance and deep, tragic beauty in the lives of those who refuse to conform, even if that refusal ultimately destroys them. The doomed queens are presented almost as martyrs to the cause of absolute personal freedom.
With that incredible framing established, the source material moves us out of the letters and into a physical journey. We are introduced to our narrator, who is taking a taxi through the town of Sayville, Long Island.
It's late October.
Late October, yeah. And they are heading to the ferry docks to cross over to Fire Island. The summer frenzy is completely over. And the mission of this trip is really somber. The narrator is going out to a beach house to sort through the clothes of the central character, Anthony Malone, who has either disappeared or died.
The text leaves his ultimate fate a bit ambiguous early on.
It does, but the atmosphere is just so heavy with loss.
And the author spends a lot of time describing Sayville in autumn, which is vital to the story's themes, because Sayville represents everything Malone and his peers fled but secretly longed for.
How so?
Well, the narrator looks out the taxi window and sees kids playing football on manicured lawns, families raking leaves, boys riding bicycles. It is the epitome of dappled, quiet American domesticity.
It's that my three sons aesthetic again.
Exactly. The narrator notes that Malone always got incredibly sentimental over Sayville, daydreaming about living a quiet life there. But the devastating irony is that during the summer, the gay crowds always drove straight through Sayville without stopping.
They never actually stayed there.
Never. The text compares them to prisoners being transferred in vans from one prison to another.
That's a strong image.
It is, escaping the prison of their sophisticated, demanding Manhattan lives, only to lock themselves into the prison of Fire Island's relentless, highly competitive social scene. They drove right past the simple happiness they claimed to be searching for.
That is a brutal observation. And when the narrator finally crosses the Great South Bay and steps onto Fire Island in October, it's a ghost town. They describe seeing a lone woman in a cerise caftan playing cards by herself.
Just one person.
Yeah, and these beautiful turquoise swimming pools that just look absurdly full and abandoned in the autumn chill. So the narrator walks up to Malone's house, which was famous during the summer for astronomical electricity bills and nonstop parties, and goes up to his bedroom to pack up his life.
This is where we get the closet inventory.
Yes, this is where the sources give us this incredible inventory of Malone's closet. And I want to lean on you for this because the sheer volume of stuff is staggering. What exactly does the narrator find in there?
The closet is essentially an archive of vanity and desperation. The narrator finds 44 shoe trees.
44.
They find racks of Halston suits, ultra-suede jackets, transparent plastic belts, and 28 different bathing suits. You have to remember, in the 1970s, ultra-suede was this revolutionary, expensive synthetic fabric championed by designers like Halston.
Right, it wasn't cheap.
Not at all. It was a massive status symbol. So Malone's closet is overflowing with the uniform of the wealthy, fashion-obsessed elite.
But the narrator hones in on one specific drawer that just breaks their heart. It's not the expensive suits. It's a drawer filled with nothing but 37 T-shirts.
Yeah.
And the sources explain that Malone didn't just buy these off the rack. He would scour Army-Navy surplus stores for plain cotton shirts, and then he would painstakingly dye and bleach them himself in his sink to achieve incredibly specific, delicate colors.
Like fading them out on purpose.
Exactly. The text mentions shades like soft plum, faded shrimp, and celery green. So what does this all mean? Why dedicate a whole paragraph to dyed T-shirts?
Because the narrator looks at that pile of perfectly dyed cotton and realizes it isn't just about fashion. It's an emblem of Malone's innocent heart.
His innocence.
Yes. It represents his inexhaustible, almost pathological desire to be liked. He curated his physical presentation down to the exact shade of faded shrimp to ensure he would be accepted, desired, and loved by this impossible, hypercritical crowd.
So the clothes act as armor.
Armor, but they are also a desperate plea for affection. The sheer volume of the wardrobe highlights the immense psychological pressure of living in that environment.
Standing in that quiet, empty room, the narrator starts flashing back to the summer that just ended. And the sources provide this rapid-fire list of vignettes, and it honestly sounds like a literal fever dream. Can you walk us through some of the things the narrator remembers happening on that beach?
The memories illustrate a world operating completely outside the bounds of normal reality. The text recalls the summer that nude sunbathing began, which was a huge cultural shift.
Right.
They remember a whale beaching itself on the sand, and later, bizarrely, a reindeer swimming offshore.
A reindeer.
A dwarf is seen wandering the beach among all these statuesque, muscular men. A Vietnam veteran missing a leg hobbles along the water's edge, wearing a heavy leather jacket in the dead of the summer heat.
There's one scene that feels so macabre and surreal, it almost doesn't sound real.
You're thinking of the corpse on the beach. The narrator recalls a sunny afternoon where a dead body lay under a sheet on the sand because the local police were simply too busy to come and remove it. And just 5 feet away from this sheeted corpse, people are casually sunbathing, drinking, and admiring a handsome man who's giving the kiss of life to a young boy who nearly drowned.
It's all happening at once.
Life, death, and eroticism are all happening within feet of each other, and no one blinks.
And the craziest detail, 2 small planes, Cessnas, literally collide in midair above the island. The sources describe bodies raining down into a grove of trees right in the middle of the meat rack, which was a wooded area where people were actively having afternoon sex. It's total sensory overload.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is painting Fire Island as a purely pagan place.
The pagan place.
Yes, it is the ultimate escape from the American continent, a sandbar where the only laws are dictated by pleasure, physical perfection, and immediate gratification.
But it's hollow.
Exactly. The narrator realizes, while looking at the abandoned October beach, that this pagan paradise is ultimately Philistine. It is shallow, it lacks soul.
Which is the tragedy of Malone.
The fundamental tragedy of Anthony Malone is that he brought a genuinely romantic, earnest, vulnerable heart to a place built entirely on ephemeral beauty and superficial transactions. He sought eternal love in a community entirely dedicated to the temporary.
That tension between the eternal and the temporary brings us right back to the city, to the epicenter of this nocturnal world. The sources describe a place known simply as the 12th floor.
The discotheque.
Right. This is a club located on the 12th floor of a deserted factory building in the lunar landscape of the West 30s in Manhattan.
It's important to understand the geography of 1970s New York to get the vibe of this place. The West 30s near the Hudson River was a desolate industrial wasteland at night, completely dead.
Just warehouses.
But at 1 in the morning, flotillas of taxis would suddenly arrive at a dim, unmarked doorway. You'd get out, go up a sketchy freight elevator, and step into this massive room.
The sensory details the author uses are overwhelming here. The air inside is thick, smelling of stale sweat, leather, and very specific chemical enhancements. The sources mention poppers and something called ethyl chloride. What was that?
Poppers, or amyl nitrite, were inhaled to provide a brief, intense head rush and muscle relaxation, heavily associated with the gay club scene.
Right.
Ethyl chloride was actually a topical anesthetic used in medicine, but clubgoers would spray it on a rag, clamp it in their teeth, and inhale it to maintain a prolonged, dissociative high on the dance floor.
Wow.
It kept them dancing for hours, completely divorced from physical exhaustion.
And the 12th floor is described in the text not just as a club, but as a profound sociological phenomenon. The author uses a specific phrase, the democracy of beauty.
The democracy of beauty.
Inside that room, the traditional hierarchies of the daylight world completely vanish.
Yeah.
Wealth, education, family background, none of it matters.
It is a strict, unyielding democracy where the only admission ticket, the only currency that holds any value, is physical beauty. The text gives a brilliant example of this.
The dishwasher.
Yes. There is a Puerto Rican boy passed out on a sofa from Downers. In the daylight world, this boy washes dishes in the CBS cafeteria, but the man bending over him, tenderly wiping his forehead, is a prestigious, wealthy doctor who treats presidents of the United States.
Worlds apart.
In the real world, they would never speak. Their social circles are galaxies apart. On the 12th floor, they are absolute equals, bound by the anarchic principle of erotic love.
But is it really a democracy if it's entirely based on physical genetics? I mean, it sounds liberating on one hand, but incredibly cruel on the other. If you aren't beautiful, you just don't exist there.
It is a ruthless meritocracy. It's liberating because it erases class and racial barriers that were heavily enforced in the 1970s. But you're right, it replaces them with a hierarchy of aesthetics. And beauty fades, which makes the whole system inherently tragic. But while you are young and beautiful, the ritual of the dance floor is experienced with religious reverence. The dancers are actually compared in the text to saints receiving the stigmata.
The sources describe a moment of pure, visceral ecstasy that happens around 6:30 in the morning. The sun is coming up outside, filtering through the grime on the factory windows. The crowd is exhausted, completely soaked in sweat. And the DJ plays a specific emotional track like Patty Joe singing, "Make me believe in you, show me that love can be true."
It's transcendent for them.
The dancers take off their shirts and unite in these cries of pure animal joy. The narrator compares them leaving the club at dawn, wringing the sweat from their dyed T-shirts into the street gutters, to athletes returning from a victorious game. They walk up Broadway, exhausted but ecstatic, their bones feeling as light as a bird's.
It's an almost holy experience for them. But amidst all this earnest, sweaty ecstasy, we are introduced to the ultimate cynic, a character who truly dictates the social tone of this world. Sutherland.
We have to talk about Sutherland. The source text describes his entrance to the 12th floor, and it is iconic. He sweeps in, trailing these wealthy Egyptian cotton heiresses. He is dressed in a black Norel gown, a turban, rhinestones, and a veil, smoking from a long cigarette holder.
Full glamour.
And just to contextualize, Norman Norell was a legendary American fashion designer known for extreme glamour and elegance. So Sutherland is treating this sweaty, drug-fueled dance floor like it's a high society gala.
Sutherland operates as the high priest of this decadent temple. He is the guide, the jaded survivor who has seen it all and believes in absolutely nothing except style. There's a scene where Sutherland is holding court on a sofa, and he has a young man with him, the heir to a massive fertilizer fortune.
The fertilizer heir.
Yes, and this young heir is completely terrified. He is overwhelmed by the sheer concentration of beautiful men in the room. He points to a gorgeous man on the dance floor and tells Sutherland, if I can find a flaw in someone, then it's not so bad. But that boy seems to be perfect. Oh, God, it's terrible.
The beauty is literally causing him psychological agony. He feels so inadequate.
It's the terror of the sublime, and Sutherland, in his infinite jaded wisdom, provides the coping mechanism. He looks at the perfect man the heir is pointing at, and he invents a flaw.
He makes one up.
He tells the boy, his chest is so hairy that one can't really see the deep, chiseled indentation between the breasts. Will that do, darling?
It's hilarious, but it's also razor sharp. It exposes exactly how these men survive the psychological toll of a society based entirely on physical perfection. They had to mentally tear each other down, find microscopic flaws, just to endure the intimidation of the room.
Sutherland is full of these dark comedic truths. He tries to protect this naive boy by stripping away any romantic illusions. He shares his cynical 3 lies in life.
Oh, these are great.
He says, number 1, the check is in the mail. Number 2, I will not come in your mouth. And number 3, all Puerto Ricans have big cocks.
Wow.
It's crude, it's campy, but it perfectly encapsulates a transactional, illusion-filled reality of their world. He wants to harden the boy up so he survives.
But then, into this room of jaded queens, drug-addled dancers, and cynical survivors walks Anthony Malone. And the contrast is immediate. The sources note that while the other extremely handsome men act aloof, looking over people's heads to maintain their power and mystique, Malone is entirely different.
He's present.
He greets people warmly. He puts his arm around them. He leans in close to listen to them over the music. He possesses this old-fashioned courtesy.
The narrator watches Malone walk in, and their eyes meet across the room. The narrator writes in his journal that meeting Malone's calm, blue-gray eyes in that chaotic, drug-fueled discotheque was like suddenly meeting the eyes of Jesus Christ in a crowded marketplace.
It completely disarms him.
Malone exudes a profound, earnest grace that is entirely alien to the 12th floor.
Which raises the central mystery of the text. How does a man with such an earnest heart, someone who commands that kind of religious reverence from strangers, end up as the focal point of the most decadent, superficial, transient world in New York City? How did Malone become a doomed queen?
To understand that, the text takes us backward. We trace his journey from his childhood to the cruising grounds of Washington, D.C.
Let's get into his backstory.
Malone's origins are his study in geographical and emotional contrasts. He was raised in the lush, sensory tropics of Ceylon.
Sri Lanka now.
Right. His father was a practical, hardworking, somewhat emotionally distant German man, and his mother was a romantic, tempestuous, witty Irish woman from Chicago. Growing up in this vibrant environment, Malone was a dutiful child, but he was a dreamer. The text notes he grew up dreaming of saints and of northern snow. He was a sponge for romantic ideals.
But at 15, he is shipped off to a snowy boarding school in Vermont to learn discipline and ambition. And it's here, in the cold, puritanical North, that Malone begins to suppress his burgeoning sexuality.
He hides it away.
He wraps himself in a prudish virginity. He does everything he's supposed to do. He goes to Yale, then law school, studies abroad in Stockholm, and joins a prestigious New York law firm to work on massive corporate litigations like the Penn Central case. He builds a flawless, impenetrable facade of American success.
He becomes the picture of the American elite. He wears dark, conservative suits from J. Press, the ultimate Ivy League outfitter. He jogs, he studies fine wines, he joins the Sierra Club. He is morally irreproachable.
Perfect on paper.
He eventually takes a job in Washington, D.C., but chooses to live far away from the city in the pristine Maryland suburbs, renting a room in a wealthy widow's mansion. But his life is completely isolated. The author describes him as living behind glass. And the text hones in on a very specific, deeply relatable pain to illustrate this.
The agony of the Sunday evening.
Yes, the Sunday evening depression.
The Sunday evening depression is such a masterful psychological detail. We all know the Sunday scaries regarding work, but this is much deeper. Malone has built a life of total professional success and intellectual pursuit, but at 8 p.m. on Sunday nights, staring out the window of his rented room, he is hit with a crushing, terrifying loneliness. The text says he feels like Prometheus chained to his rock, having his liver eaten by eagles.
Sunday evening is arguably the softest, most human time of the week. It's the time when families gather, when the distractions of the work week are completely gone. Society is structured around domestic units, and on Sunday evening, if you are outside of a unit, you feel it acutely.
It's deafening.
In the absence of his legal briefs and his carefully scheduled jogs, Malone is forced to confront the massive void in his life. He realizes that professional prestige and perfectly tailored J-press suits cannot substitute for human connection.
And this void sets the stage for his breaking point, which happens over something so seemingly innocent. The wealthy widow he rents from hires a local high school student, a boy named Michael Floria, to help Malone with the landscaping.
Just a local kid?
Michael is just a friendly, oblivious kid, a swimmer getting ready to head off to college. But Malone falls hopelessly, silently, overwhelmingly in love with him. They kneel in the dirt planting tea roses, and Malone is in absolute agony. He laughs so hard at Michael's jokes he literally falls over in the dirt, but inside he is emotionally bleeding.
It is the completely inconvenient, unsanctioned sort of love. Malone is a brilliant lawyer. He recognizes that this attraction represents the total destruction of his carefully planned, socially acceptable life.
He knows it.
He never touches the boy. He never speaks a word of his feelings. But when Michael leaves at the end of the summer for college, Malone experiences actual severe physical symptoms of heartbreak.
Physical symptom.
His knees shake violently. He feels physically wounded, like he's been in an accident. The immense effort of repressing his true self is destroying his nervous system from the inside out.
It pushes him completely over the edge. That very night, overwhelmed by this denied desire, Malone gets in his car and drives aimlessly through the neon-lit suburbs until he crosses into Washington, D.C. He parks near DuPont Circle, which was a known cruising area, walks into the dark park, and has his first homosexual encounter with an absolute stranger in the bushes.
And his reaction is immediate.
When he gets back to his rented room, his reaction is severe. He is so horrified by his own actions, by the breaking of his rigid Catholic and bourgeois moral code, that he takes an hour-long shower. He literally washes his mouth out with soap.
He writes in his journal that he is doomed to hell, quoting scripture. If the eye offends thee, pluck it out.
It is a moment of intense self-loathing.
He tries to suppress it again, retreating into a monastic life of work for another year. But the fault line has slipped. The dam is cracked. He has tasted the reality of his desire, and he realizes he cannot survive a lifetime without love.
The final leap.
The final leap into the void happens a bit later, after he has moved back to New York. He is working late in a Wall Street office, drafting a dry loan agreement, feeling like a rat gnawing off its own leg to escape a trap. A young Puerto Rican messenger boy comes into the office with some telexes.
Just delivering messages.
The boy sees the profound, exhausted loneliness in Malone's eyes, walks up behind his chair, touches his back, and kisses him on the cheek.
The text calls it the kiss of life. That single tiny moment of human connection completely unravels Malone's entire trajectory. The very next day, he walks into the partner's offices and resigns from his prestigious law firm.
He tells his family he's pursuing a career in journalism as a cover story.
But he is actually abandoning the straight world entirely to pursue a career in love. He gives up the J-press suits, the corporate ladder, the suburban peace, and goes down to sit on a stoop in Sheraton Square in the Village, transforming himself into a monk completely devoted to the pursuit of physical and romantic connection.
So Malone has completely abandoned his corporate life. Where does a person even go after making a leap like that?
Downward.
He plunges straight into the underground world of the Lower East Side. He takes a menial temp job, typing patent documents just to pay for basic food, and spends his nights wandering the desolate, cobblestone streets near the docks like a ghost waiting to be born.
And it is during one of these late-night wanderings that he locks eyes with a subway transit worker wearing an orange safety vest.
This is Frankie.
This is Frankie. The romance of how they get together is so gritty and distinctly New York. They lock eyes on a subway platform at 4 a.m., but don't speak. Weeks pass. Then, miraculously, they run into each other again in the crowded waiting room of a public VD clinic on Ninth Avenue.
It's hilarious. It's slightly sordid, but it's deeply romantic in this very specific urban way.
They meet outside the clinic, and almost immediately they move in together. They take over a massive, abandoned factory loft right above the West Side Highway.
We have to picture the West Side Highway in the 1970s. It was falling apart, industrial, completely removed from the polite society of Manhattan. Their life together in that factory is described as an idyllic, almost arboreal existence.
Like they're in a treehouse.
Yes. They are isolated, high above the harbor, watching the ships go by, completely self-contained. Frankie actually leaves his wife in Bayonne, New Jersey, to cross the river and be with Malone. They start wearing identical blue jeans and tennis sneakers. Malone, completely consumed by his love for Frankie, decides to physically transform himself to match Frankie's natural, rugged beauty.
He hits the gym.
He joins a gritty gym, eats a strict diet of avocados and meat on the advice of a Sicilian gym owner, and builds the muscular, perfect body that will later make him famous on the club circuit. For a brief moment, Malone believes he has found the perfect, eternal happiness he was seeking.
He feels like he's on a high promontory above the world. He loves spending quiet Sunday evenings with Frankie. The very same Sunday evenings that used to terrify him in Maryland are now his favorite part of the week.
But the peace doesn't last.
No. The cultural and class clash between them makes a fracture inevitable. Frankie is highly practical. He wants to learn a trade. He talks about becoming a TV repairman or an electrician and moving out to a house in the New Jersey suburbs.
It's a devastating, tragic irony. Frankie, who comes from a working-class background, aspires to the exact middle-class stability that Malone just detonated his life to escape. Frankie wants the house, the union job, the predictable future. He is deeply intimidated by Malone's elite education and refined tastes. Malone, conversely, is highly educated and privileged, therefore he romanticizes poverty.
He wants the bohemian life.
He romanticizes the grit of the city, the danger. He finds Frankie's practical ambitions and his love for sitting around watching television to be intellectually and emotionally stifling. The very calm that Malone first loved in Frankie's eyes begins to feel like a lethargy of spirit. Malone feels trapped in the loft.
And so, the betrayal happens. Malone, who is now physically perfect and addicted to the kinetic energy of the city, starts wandering again. The text describes him going out to Grand Street on a blistering hot afternoon with the simple intention of buying a watermelon.
Just a watermelon.
And somehow ending up in bed with a beautiful stranger in an apartment above a hardware store. He starts sleeping with other men in the afternoons while Frankie is working. But Malone is either too honest or perhaps too self-destructive, and he documents these affairs in his journal. Frankie, who is already feeling deeply insecure about their class differences, finds the journal left open on their mattress.
The confrontation is violent. Frankie is fiercely territorial and holds deeply conservative views on loyalty. He demands to know where Malone has been. He slaps Malone, shoves him against the brick wall of the loft, and beats him, actually cracking his ribs.
He cracked his ribs.
The physical violence shatters the sanctuary they had built. Malone is heartbroken that the man he loved could turn on him so brutally, but he realizes explanation or reconciliation is impossible. He flees the loft into the warm, empty summer night, bleeding and in shock.
This leads to one of the most cinematic, surreal scenes in the entire source material. Malone is battered, crying, sitting on a stoop in the village. And who happens to find him? Sutherland. Sutherland is emerging from the back door of a warehouse where the magic, fantasy, and dreams ball is breaking up. He is dressed in full drag as a 17th century wigged duchess. Sutherland takes one look at Malone's terrified face, flags down a cab, and takes him to his luxurious suite at the Carlisle Hotel.
It's the ultimate collision of grit and glamour. Sutherland sits Malone down, cleans the blood from his wounds with expensive Germain Montet astringent, and immediately begins offering his highly cynical philosophy to counter Malone's romantic despair.
He always has a philosophy.
Always. Sutherland blames the breakup entirely on the ethnic and class divide. He declares that Latins are beautiful but ultimately egocentric showgirls, and that wasps like Malone are the only true lovers because they are the only ones cold and repressed enough to truly suffer the agonizing pangs of heartache.
Such a Sutherland thing to say.
Sutherland opens his massive closet, offering Malone his choice of the intricate uniforms of the gay circuit. The bomber jackets, the plaid shirts, the transparent belts. He essentially adopts Malone into the high society gay circuit. He tells him that when love fails, all that is left is the distraction of the dance.
To hide from the furious Frankie, Sutherland suggests Malone move out of the village and deep into the Lower East Side. Malone takes a cheap room in a building that used to be the famous Electric Circus nightclub on St. Mark's Place.
St. Mark's Place.
Now, St. Mark's Place in the late 70s was the epicenter of punk rock, drug addiction, and urban decay. It was a chaotic, depressing mix. His building is filled with elderly widows, failed artists, a guy in a wheelchair, and an English girl who knocks on doors at 3 a.m. asking for unbleached soy flour while her boyfriend is actively robbing the neighbors.
It's a place of complete social oblivion.
Total oblivion.
In this environment, completely unmoored from any structure, Malone mentally regresses. The text compares him to a teenage girl preparing for a prom. Having abandoned his legal career, his family, and his first real love, his entire existence is now reduced to his physical reflection.
The T-shirts again.
Exactly. He spends his empty afternoons in his highest floor room, staring into a cracked mirror, trying on dozens of different colored T-shirts, agonizing over his appearance. He is living purely to be gazed upon and desired by strangers in the dark.
He descends into a cycle of pure, relentless physical consumption. He becomes what the author calls a prisoner of love. He makes love in deserted warehouses at 3 in the afternoon, in subway bathrooms during rush hour, and at the baths.
The bathhouses.
Right, which were massive, multi-story bathhouses functioning as epicenters for anonymous sex. He sleeps with doctors, Belgian chefs, airline pilots, and bankers. He makes a manic vow to sleep with everyone in New York just once.
A completely impossible, self-destructive goal.
He grows gaunt, his beautiful face shadowed with exhaustion and lust. And yet, after every single encounter, the existential void remains completely unfilled. He is running frantically across the geography of the city, but getting nowhere emotionally.
It is the ultimate tragedy of the doomed queen. He has achieved the absolute unbridled sexual freedom he sought when he left his law firm, but it has become a new kind of prison. The endless cycle of meaningless sex leaves him vastly more isolated than he was in his rented room in Maryland.
Which builds to the climax of the source material.
An incredibly tragicomic scene set in a dark park on 2nd Avenue.
Malone and Sutherland are sitting on a park bench late at night. Sutherland, ever the avant-garde cynic, has brought a portable tape recorder. He is secretly recording the sounds of two men having sex in the bushes nearby.
Only Sutherland.
Only Sutherland. When Malone asks why, Sutherland claims he's going to send the tape to the Duke of Alba to bury in a time capsule so future generations will know exactly what life was like in 1970s New York.
It is deeply absurd and sordid. Sutherland is treating human intimacy as a joke, a piece of performance art. But amidst this campy, ridiculous reality, Malone finally cracks.
He reaches his limit.
He tells Sutherland to turn the recorder off. He says he is completely exhausted by meaningless sex. And then, sitting in this dark cruising park, he confesses his true, deepest desire. He looks at Sutherland and says, I want to get a job. I want to live in a big white house and sit on my porch and see fireflies blinking in the evening and smell burning leaves in the fall and see my children playing on the lawn.
It is a devastating confession. The profound tragedy is that Malone is expressing a desperate longing for the exact, conventional, structured bourgeois life he systematically destroyed to get to this park bench.
The irony is just massive.
He threw away the law firm, the J-Press suits, and the quiet suburbs because it lacked passionate, consuming love. But now he has an abundance of physical passion and absolutely none of the structural warmth, safety, or continuity of a family. He is caught in a no-man's land between two worlds, unable to survive in either.
And Sutherland's response just twists the knife because Sutherland represents the harsh reality of the choices Malone made. Sutherland is genuinely baffled by the idea of Malone getting a traditional job. He laughs and asks, "Get a job? As what? A disquaire? A janitor? What will you put on your resume for the past 10 years?"
He's trapped.
Sutherland highlights the inescapable trap. Malone has burned his bridges to the straight world so thoroughly that a return to corporate law or suburban domesticity is impossible. But the gay nocturnal world he inhabits offers no future, no retirement plan, no structural continuity, only an endless, repetitive present of dancing and youth which is already slipping away from him.
It's heartbreaking. Synthesizing everything we've looked at in this deep dive, the journey of Anthony Malone is a profound, beautifully written, cautionary tale. It takes us from the pristine, emotionally sterile halls of Yale and corporate law through the sweaty, desperate ecstasy of the 12th floor to the bleak cobblestone isolation of the Lower East Side.
It covers so much ground.
It really does. It is a deep exploration of how far a human being will go and what they will sacrifice to find genuine connection in a world that often demands they hide who they are.
It shows how the pursuit of pure beauty and absolute freedom, when stripped of deeper emotional commitments, can become its own kind of prison. The structures of society, for all their flaws and repressions, do offer a framework for continuity. When you abandon all of them, you are entirely reliant on your own youth and beauty to sustain you, and that is a terrifyingly fragile foundation.
And so we want to connect this back to you, the listener. Think about the spaces in your own life where you seek community and connection. Are those spaces built on something real, something structurally sound that will support you when things get difficult? Or are they built on a beautiful illusion, a shared aesthetic, or a temporary thrill that completely fades when the lights come up and the music finally stops?
It leaves us with a final, provocative thought. In our modern culture, we often romanticize the idea of walking away from it all, giving up our conventional, boring routines to pursue our wildest desires or our most authentic selves. We view it as the ultimate act of bravery and freedom.
Right, the escape fantasy.
But the story of Dancer from the Dance suggests something far more complex. It suggests that achieving complete freedom from all societal norms and expectations might not lead to paradise. It might just leave you trapped in a different kind of cage, one where the music never stops, the lights are always flashing, but you've completely forgotten how to actually connect with another human being. Something to mull over next time you find yourself scrolling through perfectly curated lives online, wondering where the real connection went.
A perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope it gave you some profound new perspectives on history, subculture, and the human heart. Keep exploring, keep questioning the world around you, and we'll catch you on the next one.